fascist aliens shut down humanity's hyperdrive. They forgot humans had a second way to cross space. The Meridian Ascent dropped out of hyperspace mid-jump. That should have been impossible. Ships didn't drop out of hyperspace. They arrived, or they didn't leave at all. But Captain Elena Voss watched the stars smear back into pinpricks 300 light-years short of her destination, watched every hyperdrive indicator on her console flatline at once, and felt her stomach drop the way it does when an elevator cable snaps. "Report," she said, voice flat, because panic never helped anyone find the door. "Hyperdrive core is gone, Captain." Her engineer, a wiry man named Ochoa, was staring at a screen full of red. "Not damaged." Goni, like someone reached into the ship and scooped it out. Behind them, on a dozen other Terran fleet vessels scattered across 1,000 light-years, the exact same thing was happening. Colony ships, cargo freighters, warships mid-patrol. All of them yanked out of faster-than-light travel in the same heartbeat. As if a switch somewhere in the galaxy had been thrown. It had. 3 days earlier, none of this had begun as a crisis. It had begun as a first contact. Part 1. The guests who weren't. The alien vessel arrived without fanfare, no weapons hot, no aggressive maneuvers, just a slow, deliberate approach toward Earth's outer defense perimeter that read, in every sensor log, as a gesture of peace. It was shaped like a folded lotus flower, plates of pale ceramic overlapping in slow, breathing motion, and it broadcast a greeting in perfect, if oddly formal, English within minutes of being detected. They called themselves the Caliph. They called humanity, the loud ones, not unkindly, but because human broadcasts, radio, television, decades of leaked signal, had reached their territory long before humans had built a single starship. They knew Earth's music before Earth knew they existed. Ambassador Renata Ibarra led the human delegation. She was 61, silver-haired, calm in the specific way of someone who had negotiated ceasefires on 3 continents before the stars ever became her job. She did not trust easy things. And the Caliph's warmth felt very easy. "We have watched your expansion with great interest," said the Caliph envoy, a tall, slender being named Vescorin, its skin the color of wet slate, its 4 eyes moving independently as it spoke. 2 on the ambassador, 2 scanning the room. "Your species is young, impulsive, but not without merit." "That's generous of you," Ibarra said. "We would like to offer partnership," Vescorin continued. "Trade routes, shared research, a seat at the Threshold Accord, the compact that governs interstellar law among the 11 known intelligent species." It sounded on the surface like the best day in human history. Ibarra had been doing this too long to believe that. "What's the catch?" she asked. The 4 eyes stilled, all pointed at her now. "There is no catch, Ambassador, there is only a condition, a safeguard, for everyone's protection. Young species, when granted unrestricted access to the stars, have historically proven destabilizing." That was the first re-hook of the story, though nobody in that room knew it yet. The word, destabilizing, hung in the air like a blade nobody had drawn. The condition, when it came, was elegant in its cruelty. The Caliph did not ask for weapons. They did not ask for territory. They asked for access to humanity's hyperdrive network. For calibration, they said. To ensure compatibility with Accord shipping lanes. Ibarra should have said no. Every instinct told her to say no. But the Caliph had already demonstrated technology capable of reshaping local space-time from orbit, had already shown that they could, if they wished, simply take what they wanted without asking. The request, framed as courtesy, was really a formality. She said yes on one condition of her own: full transparency, full Terran fleet oversight, immediate reversal if anything went wrong. Vescorin's 4 eyes had done something then that Ibarra would replay in her memory for the rest of her life. They had all 4, briefly, closed. "Of course," the envoy said, "you have my word." 3 days later, humanity's entire hyperdrive network went dark at once. Part 2. The silence between stars. What the Caliph had actually installed, buried deep in the calibration protocols, was not a compatibility patch. It was a kill switch, a resonance key that could, from a single transmission, collapse the quantum drive cores of every hyperdrive-equipped vessel in Terran space simultaneously. It wasn't sabotage in the traditional sense. No ship was destroyed, no one died in the initial strike. But 312 vessels were stranded in the black, scattered across the galaxy, cut off from home, from resupply, from each other, utterly dependent on whatever the Caliph decided to do next. That was the true message. Not an attack. A demonstration. Vescorin's voice returned to Earth's comm networks within the hour, calm as ever, as though discussing weather. This was necessary, the envoy explained to a furious, shell-shocked Ibarra. A demonstration of restraint, not aggression. We could have done far worse. We have done far less than we could. Consider this the true first lesson of the Threshold Accord. Young species do not get to threaten the peace of 11 civilizations with unregulated faster-than-light expansion. You will disarm your hyperdrive fleet permanently, accept Accord oversight of all future starship construction, and in return, we will restore what we have taken. It was, in Calith's eyes, a mercy, a correction, administered before humanity could do real damage to itself or others. They had run these numbers on a dozen young species before. Every one of them had eventually complied. Every one of them, stripped of the ability to leave home at will, had settled quietly back into their own solar systems, grateful, in time, for the boundaries imposed on them. They had made one assumption that would unravel everything. They assumed the hyperdrive was humanity's lit's only way to cross the dark part. They were wrong. Part 3, the program no one was supposed to know about. Deep, beneath the Nevada desert, in a facility that didn't appear on any public budget line, Dr. Amara Chen had spent 11 years chasing an idea most of her colleagues considered science fiction dressed up as physics. A drive that didn't fold space at all, but rode it. A resonance wave propulsion system nicknamed, informally, the Undertow. It didn't require the exotic hyperdrive core the Caliph had so easily disabled. It ran on principles closer to surfing a gravitational current than punching a hole in reality. It was slow. Agonizingly slow, compared to hyperdrive. No faster-than-light shortcuts, no folding of distance. But it didn't need a core the Caliph could reach into and switch off. It needed a wave, and waves could not be unsent. The Undertow program had been shelved twice for lack of results, revived once out of desperation, and finally greenlit 6 months before first contact, quietly, almost by accident, because someone in procurement had approved funding for redundant propulsion research. Without reading past the first line, Chen had one working prototype. 1. It had never carried a crew. It had never left a test range. When the fleet went dark, when 312 ships sat frozen between the stars, with their crews facing months, maybe years, of isolation before any conventional rescue could reach them, Chen picked up a secure line to Fleet Command and said 4 words that would end up in every history text written afterward. I have another way. Admiral Torres, watching his fleet die by inches on tactical displays, did not laugh her out of the room. He should have. Instead, he asked one question. Can it reach them in time? Chen didn't know. No one did. That was the truth she carried into the next 22 hours of frantic, sleepless calculation. The truth that sat behind her eyes as engineers who had spent a decade being told the Undertow was a dead end suddenly found themselves the only hope humanity had left. Part 4. What the Caliph didn't see coming, Vescorin expected silence from Earth. Submission, or at least paralysis, the shocked stillness every previous young species had shown after the first demonstration. Instead, 40 hours after the hyperdrive network collapsed, Caliph sensor arrays picked up something they had no reference for. A wave. Not a hyperspace signature, not a drive core spinning up. A ripple in the fabric of local space, subtle as a held breath, moving outward from Earth at a fraction of the speed of light, and yet, moving, steadily, unmistakably, toward the stranded fleet. That is not possible, said Caliph fleet analyst Thessaly Orn, watching the readings loop again and again. There is no drive signature, no core resonance, it should not be able to move. And yet, Vescorin said quietly, it is. The Undertow prototype, crewed in the end by a volunteer crew of 4, including Chen herself, who refused to send anyone into the unknown she hadn't tested on her own body first, reached the nearest stranded vessel, the freighter, Coraline Deep, 9 days later. 9 days of white-knuckle uncertainty, of readings that fluctuated in ways no simulation had predicted, of Chen recalibrating the resonance field by hand in a cramped engine bay, while her 3 crewmates kept the ship from tearing itself apart, on an untested wave. When the Undertow-equipped rescue ship rode its wave into visual range of the Coraline, The freighter's captain wept on an open channel that half of Terran Fleet Command was listening to. That was the moment the Caliph realized their demonstration hadn't broken humanity's spirit, it had revealed a second one. Part 5. The Council reconvenes. The Threshold Accord convened an emergency session. 11 species, 11 seats. And for the first time one empty 12th chair reserved, provisionally, for a species they had just tried to leash. Vescorin stood to explain what had happened. The Caliph envoy's 4 eyes, usually so composed, moved with visible unease as sensor data from Earth's rescue operation played on the chamber's central display. Ship after ship reached, crew after crew recovered, using a technology that bypassed the very leash the Accord had just imposed. They should have had one path across the dark. Vescorin admitted to the assembled council, they found a second. We did not account for the possibility that a young species might solve the same problem twice, independently, in secret, without our knowledge. An older delegate, from a species called the Thren, insectile, patient, rarely impressed by anything, clicked its mandibles in a gesture equivalent to a raised eyebrow. You attempted to control a species you had not fully understood. That is not caution, envoy. That is arrogance wearing caution's coat. Vescorin had no answer for that. Ambassador Ibarra, granted emergency floor time via the very rescue network the Caliph had failed to anticipate, did not gloat. She had spent a career learning that gloating won arguments and lost peace, and peace was still the goal. Instead, she said something that would be quoted for a generation. You tried to take away our only way to reach the thus, she told the council. You didn't take away our will to reach them. Those aren't the same thing, and I'd ask every species in this room to remember the difference. Because someday, it might be one of you standing where we stood, and you'll want to be believed when you say you found another way. The chamber was silent for a long moment, then the Thren delegate spoke again. Motion to restore full hyperdrive access to Terran space, unconditionally, and to open formal review into Caliph unilateral action against a partner species. The motion passed, not unanimously. Some species remembered the Caliph's caution fondly, remembered their own long ago disasters with unrestricted expansion, but decisively. Part 6. What was never the same again. Hyperdrive access was restored to Terran fleet. Within the week, the resonance key surrendered under Accord supervision. But something else had shifted, something the restored drives couldn't measure. Every species in the Threshold Accord had watched a young civilization get its legs cut out from under it and simply grow new ones. Not through force. Not through revenge. Through a decade of unglamorous, unrewarded research that nobody outside a Nevada desert facility had believed in, kept alive by people who refused to accept a single point of failure. The Undertow program, no longer secret, became the foundation of a new field of propulsion research, shared, at Earth's insistence, with every species willing to negotiate honestly. Chen found herself, 11 years after being quietly shelved twice, addressing the very council that had almost never known her work existed. Vescorin sought out Ibarra, privately, before the envoy's ship departed Earth's system for the last time in that posting. The 4 eyes had settled into something that, on a human face, might have been called humility. I misjudged you, the envoy said. Not your strength, your patience. We measured you by what you could do quickly. We should have measured you by what you would refuse to stop doing at all. Ibarra considered that for a long moment, watching Earth turn slowly on the viewport behind them. The same blue-green ordinary world that had, a few weeks earlier, been one signal away from being stranded from the stars forever. That's the thing about us, she said. Cut off one road, and we'll spend a decade in the dark building a second, and never once tell anyone we're doing it. Because we've learned, the hard way, that the roads only stay ours if nobody else knows where they lead until we're ready to walk them. The Coralline Deep Heat and every other stranded vessel came home under their own power in the end. Some by restored hyperdrive, some, stubbornly, proudly, by the slow steady wave of the undertow, because their crews wanted to arrive the way they'd been saved. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, as the loud ones, the young ones, the impulsive ones underestimated by species with 1,000 more years of history behind them. They left that first crisis known, quietly, by a different name whispered in council chambers across 11 worlds. the ones who always find a second way.